Mr. Stephen, you wave at me. We're good? Mr. Mike, you ready? Kirk, are you ready for this?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see y'all.
Okay. I'd like to call to order this Henderson County Board of Education special meeting. Today is August the 31st. It's 5:30. This meeting is conducted via teleconference with our alternate physical location during this pandemic. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the prior meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read those, and are there any additions or changes?
I'll make a motion we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to reopening of school programs. First one is instruction. Ms. Morgana.
Members of the board, as you all are aware, based on the governor's recommendation, we did start our school year in NTIO, which is non-traditional instruction. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, as you all are aware, we started this school year not an in-person class as recommended by the governor and the Kentucky Department of Education and the Department of Public Health, and we have started NTI. So tonight I wanted to give you a little update on how our instructional year is unfolding. You've already heard lots of information about how NTI is different than how we delivered it in the spring. One of the main things is being able to provide professional development for our teachers, and then not just that one-time professional development, but ongoing support as they're working in their classrooms right now. And that's another huge plus for us. Our staff are all in the buildings working. So as teachers need some help and support, you can ask your colleague, and you can, work in grade level teams together to look at how to provide more rigorous instruction. This year also with NTI, we have kindergarten through grade 12 Chromebooks. So all of our students have a Chromebook at home that they are able to use if they need it. We also, every teacher have Google Meets, 2 a day, 3 a day, some have 4 and 5 meets with students a day. So our kids are seeing our teachers on a daily basis, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 times, just depending on their schedule and on the day. We also have a mental health plan in place that we've been using for our NTI days. And yes, we still have to rely on the internet that doesn't always cooperate with us. And Friday we had a total district outage. There was a line cut, AT&T, and so Henderson and Christian County were completely shut down. Immediately, our principals went into Plan B and communicated out to families how and when their Google Meets would occur. So some of our classroom teachers used their own personal hotspots, came to school and booted up and were able to do it. Others felt it was better to work from home because they had stronger internet access, but we were able to maintain still quite a bit of instruction for Friday. So that's only 3 days worth of work. Seems like 18 maybe. And in front of you and in your board packet, I include a September calendar to show you what we anticipate September will look like. We want our students in the classrooms. Our kids want to be in school, and our teachers want the kids as well. It's a total win-win for everyone. But we also know we have a pandemic out there. So what we plan for the month of September, if you want to circle on your calendar, I left you one at your desk also, but circle the 28th because that is the day we want to go hybrid model. We want our kids in 2 groups. So half of our kids would come on Monday and Tuesday, and the other half would come to school on Thursday and Fridays. And we would, that is how we want to progress back into, with the hopes towards the end of October being full in class, or before the end of October being in full class. So what happens between the 28th and today? So today's the 31st on your calendar. Today we started to enter into our classrooms our 672 special needs students. How were those 72 chosen? They were chosen if they were a special education student and they had 2 or 3 related services, meaning they needed OT, PT, and speech. And so you can see I listed in there 35 come in the morning from 8 to 10 and 37 come in the afternoon, and we are providing transportation for those students. They have to go through all of the health screening and checks and all of the guidelines that are requested in Healthy at School, that flagship document that we received weeks ago. And today went very well across our district, very well. So then we get to September 8th, and we will introduce small groups the week of the 8th, the week of the 14th, and the week of the 21st. So what exactly is a small group? There's a guidance document that we received a couple weeks ago from the Kentucky Department of Education, and the Department of Public Health have weighed in on it. And it said, if you look over underneath the 6th on that calendar, I put a little list of reasons of why we feel in Henderson County is the best reason to focus on small groups. Students who need some intervention. We had kindergartners who finished their kindergarten year in March and then went to NTI. We have skills that we need some interventions. Same way with first grade and second grade. We may have some evaluations that we need to complete on students. We want to bring those students in. We also know that there are some students who have limited internet access at home, so we call that check and connect. If a teacher hasn't heard or seen a student, let's see if we can get them in small groups. The guidelines say they can only come between 90 and 120 minutes a day, and we can only have between 15 to possibly up to 25% of our kids in the building at one time. So it's when small group is a limited number. But now that doesn't mean that you can't run that percentage from 8 to 9:30, and then a whole different group comes in from 9:30 until 11. So you can cover several kids in one day, just not at one time. Another reason is our CTE unit. An example given in the guidance document was safety. They come in, and as we start our school year in welding and construction and even in our health services, there's certain safety modules they need to go through, a protocol they need to learn. Those are things they can go ahead and come in and go through those safety classes, so when we do return, they're ready to go. And then for tutoring, AP classes, if kids need some tutoring, that's another reason that we would certainly want to bring them in. We asked each school to design a plan for those 3 weeks, the week of the 8th, the 14th, and the 21st. And today we listened to 7 different school plans. They were all focused on exactly looking at kindergarten, first, and second grade. In our elementary, our teachers were very excited that they could work with a group of 4 or 5 kids at a time. And they're still going to continue NTI. This does not mean that NTI goes away. Our primary mode for instruction is NTI all the way to the 25th. This is in addition to their Google Meets. It will be by appointment, by invitation to students, and there are areas and cases that we feel like we can provide transportation for some of the students as well. So through the month of September, that's how we look that we're going to start to reintroduce students into our school and ready on the 28th to go a hybrid model. Then the week after the 28th is our fall break. So that gets us to fall break. And so I appreciate the opportunity tonight to give you an update to let you know every day we continue to focus on how can we safely get our students back with our staff. And we know we can do that following the guidelines that we've been given. Does anybody have any questions?
Mike?
This week, where you talk about the special education students, 35 in the morning, 30, is that at each school building, or is that at just one particular location?
It is across our district.
Thank you.
Okay. My question is, for those kids that you're going to have them in for 90 minutes, say, Is there daycare available for those until those parents can come and pick them up, or are the parents going to have to pick them up as soon as that 90 minutes is over?
They would have to pick them up when the 90 minutes is over.
Okay. When does our daycare start? Because I know the Boys and Girls Club had a date. Do we have a date start for that?
Our child care is already running.
Already ready? Okay.
At 3 different sites.
Okay.
But any school in the elementary that needs the child care can go to one of those 3 sites. We just house it at 3 different locations.
Okay.
But it's been up and running since July 13th.
Okay. So we can possibly make arrangements if those kids are in daycare that also need some of this special instruction to move them to their school for their 90 minutes, or is that going to be the parent's responsibility to do that,
We're originally asking for parent responsibility,
if possible?
if possible, right now.
Right.
But we met with Mr. Steiner today. He sat in and listened to all of the plans that the schools have presented. And when we can provide 2 or 3 buses out at Chandler or at Niagara or at South Heights
Right.
to work, because every school picked their own time. So Chandler's time is 8 to 9:30 in the morning.
Okay.
But then you go to East Heights, and they have 3 different 90-minute times through the day. So it's not like we can say, hey, we're all going to run our buses from 12 to 1:30 and just pick up kids, and
Right.
because it didn't work that way.
Right. But that may be a blessing to where we have some chances. And I know we always have school personnel and vehicles available to transport children if necessary. So
We are certainly committed to
Getting
trying to find a yes for every student that needs to come,
Right.
trying to find a way to help make that happen.
And I saw the mental health counseling part on there too. So are those children being identified as best we can from their teachers?
Yes, when the principals gave us their plans today, they've even listed the kids who's in group 1, who's in group 2, who they would already like to propose, and they had a list of students that they want to check in with guidance counselors.
Okay.
By
Okay.
name. Yes,
By
ma'am.
name. Okay, cool. Name and claim. Name and claim. Okay. Mr. West, you got any questions about this plan?
So on the 28th, that's the groups 1 and groups 2. That's all of Henderson County split up in 2 different groups. Every
Yes, sir.
student.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like we could start that maybe a week or 2 earlier, just getting people in quicker. Or are we still just following, I guess, the governor's recommendation?
We are. The administration is at this point. Not that we've not discussed it, to be honest with you. We have, but we felt like with our teachers, let's let them work for 3 or 4 weeks consistently, and then help prepare them for the change on the 28th, to be honest, and to take advantage of bringing in as many kids as we can before then. So,
You all have our approval for all 3 different modes of education. So if you find that you get moving faster along with the kids, and you get those weeks done before the 28th, myself, you have my permission to move that forward if you need to. Step that up and start your hybrid before the 28th. I mean, you have our permission to go with any 3 that you need. So,
thank you.
if anybody else has got them, I'd like to see them back in classes sooner for the hybrid model. But if your teachers need that time, then that's fine too. Yeah. Ms.
That was
Tracy?
contained in a motion that we made in the reopening of schools, that the
Right.
superintendent could use any of the 3 methods at the
Exactly.
time she felt necessary. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
And that's what I want her to
My
operate on.
understanding, but
Mine too.
okay.
Yeah, mine too. Ms.
Sure.
Tracy?
I'm sorry. I would not object in that hybrid model moving up to the week of the 21st. If there was a way that we could get them, start that hybrid a week sooner, I would be fine with that. So,
Once again, up to you and your staff. You all know your people, and you know the students, and you all know that. So, but to be sure that you have this blessing, don't worry about the governor from this group. So, yeah. Okay. Anything else?
No, the only other thing I was going to share with you, as you know, the next thing on the agenda is athletics. And it is a little different than instruction, in that I know that you all are aware and you've heard that the KHSAA and the Kentucky Department of Education and the governor's office, this is a place where the school board does have to weigh in, and it talks about that the local board makes a recommendation moving forward. So,
Right, we are aware of that.
awesome.
And I think your part about the instruction moving forward and moving it up, in my mind, I don't speak for the rest of this board, in my mind, plays a part in when we start sports and how we start sports, because to my mind, we have to have both. We have kids who need in-person instruction as much as they need sports and camaraderie. So I can't in good conscience answer to parents who are trying their hardest to do NTI and let sports go 3 and 4 weeks ahead of time. So we need to have both in there. So, yeah.
And
sure.
I feel like we are responding to that with a
Right.
schedule like September, because kids are coming back into the building.
True, that's good.
So,
That's good, yeah. Anything else? Mr. Kirk, I don't mean to forget you over here. I'm used to having you to the right of me, so.
I would like to see at our September 21st meeting, I would like to see details about how families are broken into group 1 and group 2 for the hybrid. And then I would like to see just get numbers based on males and females, students of color, to make sure that we're having an equitable and diverse plan to bring students back into the schools.
I can answer
if-
the first part of your
I
question.
would start
Oh, I'm
with
sorry.
28. Whenever hybrid starts, so the 21st, we would have a week, beforehand to see that. If hybrid's going to start before, I would like to see those numbers before.
I think she could possibly answer that part of it right now, Kirk. Hold on a second.
I can't. The students were grouped based on a family model. We made sure that we would not leave an elementary student at home. So if an elementary student is in group 1, so is their middle school sibling and their high school sibling, if they have them. And so that was primarily the number one factor of how we grouped students, trying to help with childcare at home.
That's a safe way to do it, yes. I agree. Okay. She'll get more details to us, Kirk, I'm sure. Part of those details about getting them back into classes, we're going to have to leave to these professionals and these teachers and these principals to get them back together the best way possible. So, yeah. Okay. Do you need an approval of that plan, Ms. Margana? Is that something you need an action on?
Ma'am, I don't
We've already
think
given
so.
you an approval back in
Yep.
August, correct? Okay, thank you. Moving on to athletics, Mr. Bob? Dr. Bob. That's going to be hard to say. How about just Bob? There you go.
Bob sounds good too. That sounds good. Hey, and before we move on to athletics, and I know Ms. Stanley is talking about our transition into small groups, and then we want to move to hybrid. But I want to compliment you for making this district a one-to-one district, and all the professional development work that Mr. Thompson and Ms. Gibson and Ms. Sandifer have done to train our teachers. We're doing NTI at a level that not all others are, and our students are so fortunate that we are a one-to-one district, and it says that we put academics first, that we provide exceptional opportunities for our kids, even in a pandemic, even through NTI, and then that we are an innovative leader. The fact that we are one-to-one, grades K through 12, only speaks to your great leadership, and that our kids are provided that during this pandemic, because that is not the case across the state.
Right. Yeah, that's become very apparent when you talk to families and friends of ours across the state. So, but yes, this board has been good about approving the money spent, because that's always a big expenditure. It's not how to do it, when to do it. It's did we have the funds to do it, and we've put that first. So, correct.
And as someone who is not new to Henderson, but new back to the community again, I have a first grader and a fourth grader. And I'm so thankful that you guys were visionaries in that, and that we're prepared and they're providing their education right now. Thank you very much for that. I'd also just like to thank you for always being excellent leaders and putting student safety at the forefront, student achievement at the forefront, and our children's development at the forefront, which includes athletics. Ms. Stanley talked a little bit about the timeline of events, but I just want to just briefly revisit those. On August 20th, the KHSAA voted to continue with option 1, and that provided an allowance for students to participate in athletics, but also parts of those documents explain that it's at the local board's decision as to how you apply that and how you move forward with that. Then on August 24th, Governor Brashear voiced his displeasure to some degree about their decision, but didn't overturn their decision of the KHSAA. On August 28th, the Kentucky Board of Education had a lengthy meeting, and out of that came a letter to the KHSAA Board of Control requesting that they take a deeper look at especially high contact sports. On August 28th, Mr. Steiner, Mr. Thompson, and I met with our secondary principals, athletic directors, and a group of our fall sport coaches. Some of those were busy doing their NTI assignments, their Google Meets, teaching their kids, and so we couldn't get them all there, but we had a really good group. It was a motivated group, and so that day we looked at some sources of data. And I'll talk to you in a second about those. We set some criteria after conversation and collaboration with many of you and discussions between Ms. Stanley and I of what we thought we could do moving forward to both protect our students and their safety, their well-being, while also helping their development through athletics. So some of the criteria we set was that we would avoid hotspots of Warren County, Jefferson County, Fayette County, and possibly Vanderburgh County. And the sources of data we used to determine what those hotspots were the Kentucky COVID-19.ky.gov. There's an interactive map there that lays that out. And Kentucky.com has a very easy to read map. And we studied rate per capita, not only COVID numbers, but rate per capita to determine those hotspots. We asked them to remove tournaments from their schedule, as that brought lots of different communities together, and we felt like that could increase potential risk. Then I asked them just in general to create plans to mitigate risk of our students contracting the coronavirus. And we talked about lots of different things that day, but the sentiment I got from our coaches that day is that they were excited about the possibility of starting their seasons, and that above all, they wanted to start on time with athletics. And so if you wouldn't mind going to slide 3, and let's talk about these. We're going to begin with high school athletics. Our high school, as you can look down the timeline column, they've requested that we start on time as scheduled in the KHSAA guidelines, and some modifications that they were willing to make to do things at a level of excellence in Henderson County, even above that of the state requirement. As you can see, cross-country canceled scheduled meets in Lexington and Louisville, just as we asked. Football said they would drop freshman games, play only varsity and junior varsity, playing at only 2 levels, significantly reduces the number of contacts. Those students will still be able to play, the underclassmen will still be able to play, but they'll play in the JV games. Boys soccer, they canceled their game with South Warren, which is in Warren County, and replaced that with Muhlenberg County. That was something they had already done, so some of our coaches were already leading. They were getting out front. They understood that and were leading out front. Girls soccer canceled any games against Warren County schools and the Evansville Memorial Tournament. Those coaches say those tournaments are important for postseason play, to be prepared for that, but they were willing to make that modification. The girls' soccer team would still go play a game at Castle, which I believe is reasonable on their part to prepare them for postseason play. Volleyball, they canceled their match with Warren East, which is in Warren County, and dropped out of the Quad State Tournament. And they're canceling the Jerry Mazer Spike Fest, which is our tournament here, memory of the great athletic director, Mr. Jerry Mazer. I know they'll look to some other way to celebrate Coach Mazer, the fine job he did. Cheerleading said they would cheer only at home football games. Dance would be at halftime of home soccer and football games, and they wouldn't do any partner tricks to limit contact there. And then middle school softball, I learned this, is under the umbrella of high school athletics. When I talked with Mark, he said that he made me aware of that. I asked him to reschedule that first game, to postpone it from September 15th to September 17th, and I'll talk to you guys about that in just a second and why we did that. So that is our high school sports that we are proposing to the board tonight. If you would go to the next slide, we'll talk about middle school sports. At this point, we would allow all middle school sports to continue practice and conditioning. Again, I met with the middle school principals and athletic directors and some of the coaches, and they've continued to meet and talk, and we've texted and emailed and different things like that. Middle school competition will begin on September 17th, and that would be across the board. And the reason that I asked them for that was that if we begin high school sports on time, then we would only have about a week or so to figure out all the logistics, planning, transportation, protocols, and that would give us a little bit of a window there to figure all that out and see how we can do that operationally before middle school games start. And they felt that was reasonable, and we may lose a competition or two, but those athletic directors and principals are already looking at ways to shift their schedules. In fact, I wanted you guys to know one way that they may shift their schedule. They have an open week in there sometimes, and so they may be able to move to that open week, but also in football particularly, I asked them if they had to do it, that they could move the north-south game down 1 week and also use that slot. So we just essentially would just postpone it, will allow us some time here to get all our ducks in a row in terms of all of the protocols and keep those in place. Middle school coaches and athletic directors reduced their football schedules to only conference opponents. All their opponents are in Davis County, who has a similar rate per capita to ours. Middle school volleyball plays only local teams, and in Owensboro, same thing. Middle school soccer plays primarily local teams from Owensboro, and they had a couple of games in Madisonville. Cross-country, golf, cheerleading, and dance could continue as normal. Our middle schools are not necessarily in the same spot there, but they could continue as normal, and they could begin on the 17th as well. Past that meeting, I've had a chance to talk with some coaches. I've had a chance to talk with some of you, and I know this is a tough topic for you, and I appreciate your willingness to listen, because our students' development is important, and we've got a great instructional plan moving forward, how we're stepping that in incrementally. And our kids, dating back to June 25th at our board meeting, our board asked our students to postpone 2 weeks to do some other things, and they asked the students and families, they did that. And they did that to the level of excellence that we all asked them to do. Since then, they've continued only to do those things we asked them to do at the level of excellence we asked them to do it. And I have full confidence that they'll continue to do this moving forward. So, do you have any questions regarding this fall sports proposal?
I know that you said that you are waiting for some guidance from the Kentucky different departments regarding the use of locker rooms, in-person fans in the stands, transportation. So those details we are not working on tonight. You all are working on that in the future. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Those details, we would, if you guys would approve this tonight, we'll begin working out. We've already started on some of those details. Our leaders are leading out front like we always do. We begin work on those. It will take more time to figure all of that out. And then in this plan, it would give us a chance to plan that, have a high school game, have a few days between that and the first middle school games to apply all the things maybe we didn't foresee the first time.
I'm going to ask all the different board members their thoughts on this and give them a few moments. You already know that this has been a tough decision and a tough topic for all of us. And personally, you've probably heard that we're from one extreme to the other on how this ought to be handled. I do applaud you with trying to come up with a compromise and working with our ADs and our coaches to do that. Do you feel this is a safe compromise for us to beginning, knowing that this whole board is all over the board trying to come up with an answer on this? Do you feel like this is a good and safe compromise for us to move forward?
This is no doubt a tough topic for you all, and you all represent your constituents in this community. I know how important student safety, student achievement, and student development is to this board. It's a tall task to find a balance, especially in a time where there's so much uncertainty and things continue to change with rollouts and dates and meetings and recommendations. It is very hard to do. I only want to reiterate that our students have earned this opportunity. They've done a fantastic job. Our student athletes have, our coaches have, our families have. When the governor recommended we move schools to September 28th, that changed things a little bit, but I feel like our instructional team has made a fantastic instructional plan moving towards that date. With the guidance we have right now, we could begin athletics now, and I think that would be fantastic for our students in terms of their development, and it would support the work they've done. And I believe moving forward that our leadership, I believe most in our leaders right now, that our coaches, our athletic directors, our principals, our students and their families are committed to doing the things it takes to keep everyone safe and move forward with athletics. And I think this plan that they've made together is evidence of that, and through collaboration with me and with you guys. I certainly think that there are always risks, but in athletics, there's never a time you participate in athletics where there's no risk. And so moving forward, I believe this plan is a very good collaborative plan, and that it keeps our kids safe, it reduces risk and exposure, and it also helps continue their development. So to answer your question without being so long-winded, yes, I believe we have a really good plan moving forward.
Mr. Mike?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to give everyone a chance to give us your thoughts, and then we'll move forward. So would you like to
Okay.
start?
First and foremost, I want to thank the administration, athletic directors, coaches, principals. There's been a lot of time and energy and effort spent on this business of athletics, just as there has been on academics. On June the 20th, we did make some concessions at that time with regards to how we would open up the athletics and control them, and I do think that our coaches have done a fantastic job. But what's even more important, I think our students have done a great job of listening to the coaches. I'm not naive enough to think that, 100% of the time all these kids are doing exactly what they're supposed to, but I think they have made an effort over these last months to do what's been asked of them to see to it that they can have some kind of athletic programs this year. I made my position real clear. I didn't think that if we were not in school that athletics should be taking place. I'm not certain at this time that I have wandered from that position, but I do think that we're facing a situation that is unknown, that has been different. I think our kids are doing a lot to try and learn right now. We learn from every situation that we're faced. The recommendations that we've seen have all been for the purpose of minimizing the potential for exposure. Every recommendation the governor's made, every recommendation the KHSAA has made, every recommendation this board has made has been to minimize the potential for exposure. Exposure has creeped up in this state. Over half the counties in this state are at some level of exposure that have been increasing. But I only look in the mirror every day and see what athletics can do for a person. And these kids, they need athletics. Parents want them to play, they want to play, and I want them to play. And I think everybody on this board wants them to play. And I think with what we've seen here as a proposal is great. But I've got two requests. One, in our reopening plan, there's something put on page 14 that said this board has the right to review and/or modify, change, reject any proposal from the KHSAA. I'm trying to remember what the second one is. Got me lost. I think we're minimizing the potential for exposure with this kind of a schedule. And I think our kids deserve an opportunity to try. And I think that as we move forward in this, that this board has the opportunity to come together again as a group and decide if there's problems, that we shut it down. Because there is that potential. Because this COVID virus is real. It's been divisive in communities. It's been divisive in families. It's caused misrepresentation in faith and trust, all along the fact that we're not sure because we don't know what this thing can or can't do. We've rationalized it. I could bring you a stack of papers to fill up this whole room to kind of give you a feeling of what my position is, and I'm sure that a person that has a differing opinion can fill up the same room with the same kind of information. But athletics is important. It builds character, it builds leadership, it builds quality education for these kids. Very few of these kids are going to have a chance to play after high school. Very, very few. I think it's important that our high school programs are able to kick off at a time and be successful. And I want them to be successful. And I think that we can learn enough by kicking off the high school programs that we can move it to the middle school programs a little bit behind schedule. But I think we can be successful. But I do reserve that right as a member of this board because we have an obligation not just to this district with regards to education. We have an obligation right now, considered in this pandemic, to this community because the more youngsters that are involved means the more parents that are going to be involved as fans, and the more mingling there's going to be and the more potential for exposure. So even though I've been kind of adamant over the last several months that unless they're sitting in school, these kids are doing everything that we're allowing them to do and capable of doing to learn. And whatever proposal that comes from the superintendents, the administration, to our chairperson, I'm going to support. If this proposal comes based upon what we're seeing as this recommendation, I want everybody to know I'm in support of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. I appreciate that. Wholly agree. Mr. Kirk, would you like to weigh in on this?
I understand from Dr. Bob. I thought it was real important. He helped me find the map on the Herald Leaders website. And so that was good. That's where this data is coming from. Some people ask me that a lot of times, like what data are we using to make our decisions? I'm really happy to see Margana put out a plan that instruction comes before academics. Before athletics, academics comes first. So I say let them play. Go Colonels.
Thank you, sir. Mr. West?
Yeah, I'd say let them play. I think this is a good plan. I don't think we should delay them any further. I think we've asked them to do everything, and they've done everything we've asked them to do. And I do think, COVID is real, but so is, kids not being able to get out and be interactive with one another. I would say the only thing I would suggest as far as the schedule is that the coaches consider maybe rearranging senior night because we don't know what the future entails. So I would probably recommend moving some of that stuff around and maybe even having it sooner than later.
Move.
Get it done, get it all quick, recognize those seniors right now.
But I do believe we need to give them a chance. And I said it before, we give them a chance. I guarantee they're going to follow the rules and the steps and the safeguards that we put in place because they want to play. So.
Ms. Tracy?
First, I want to address the people outside. I so appreciate the fact that they all had on their mask, they were social distancing, and following those guidelines. That doesn't always happen when we have people come up here. They don't always follow those rules. But to me, as soon as I got out of the truck, I was like, yes, they did exactly what they were asked to do, and they did it very well, and they were cheering very hard for our Colonel family. So that right there spoke to me in a huge way. So thank you to the athletes that are outside, cheerleaders cheering, whoever else was out there. I was trying to find a mask to get out of the truck. So thank you. Athletics are very important. And as a teacher, I've always said, okay, I'm going to take this off for a minute. I've always said that instruction in the classroom always comes before we allow our children to play any sport. So we are working diligently as an administration to get our kids into our classrooms because we know that that's the best thing to do. This pandemic has been something that obviously none of us in our lifetime ever has had to endure. I hope that we never have to do it again. One of the things that has helped me to try to not be so afraid of this is my faith, and I just have to know that my faith is a bigger thing than the fear that I feel with our kids being in a building, in a ball field, in a stand, wherever. So I'm just going to go on faith, and I want to let them play. And I think at this point we need, especially with the amount of work that has been done by our coaches and our staff, to make this a doable thing when it would have been such an easy thing to just say, nope, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do it. But our coaches stepped up and made a lot of consolations. Our staff has worked diligently to make this happen, to get our kids in school and to get our kids on the fields. So I'm going to vote for them to begin.
I, too, am thrilled to hear all the consolations and all of the work that they have done. My only thing that I'd shared with you earlier today, Dr. Bob, is we can always, and this has nothing to do with how I'm going to vote, we can always work and promise our kids and promise ourselves that if we do everything right, then A plus B is going to equal C. We can always say, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. But we all know as adults, that's just life, and it doesn't always work that way. So I want our community to remember and understand. And Ms. Tracy sitting over here as a farmer and a farmer's wife can say they can go out there and plant all their fields and do everything perfectly the way they can. That doesn't guarantee they're going to have a crop. Ask the people in Iowa. They did everything right. Their crop's flat on the ground. We can always do everything right with our health and say exactly this is going to be the way it is. That's not the way life works. So we're going to try this, and I support we're going to do this. But if things go wrong and we have to shut it down because of our all of our reasons, then that's life, and we will take it, and you pick it up, and you make lemonade out of lemons. So yes, I don't have a problem with going forward with this, and I applaud them. We all have to understand that we didn't ask for this COVID-19 and this pandemic. None of us adults thought that this is the way 2020 was going to be. That's just life. We have to learn to pick it up and go on. That's part of it. So if the rest of this board is ready to take an action on this, no, we're not. Ms. Bargana's got something to say. Yes. You got one more thing? Okay. You got one more thing? Yes.
Only one more thing I didn't make clear.
Okay.
So the way we would begin high school athletics, with the KHSAA guidelines, we would move middle school athletics back to the 17th. But
Right.
at this point, we would not have elementary athletics
Okay.
at this point.
Okay. And everything else you've lined out. Yes, Ms. Morgana?
And I know tonight we didn't specifically address band, because this is more of the sport. A band has KMEA guidelines that they follow,
Correct.
but they are at our high school, and that we would allow them, afford them the same types of opportunities.
Right. I think we,
It-
yeah.
We
I
didn't
think we,
specifically speak of it, but I sure don't want to leave out our art
No.
students or our strong FFA department, extracurricular. But
Extracurricular,
I know
right.
we have to speak specifically to sports.
correct. And I believe when we talked about getting testing, there were those groups that were included in that.
Yes, yes.
They were
So I
included
wanted to
in
mention
all the
that.
things. So it's not just sports, it's extracurricular that has high contact.
Right.
Is that what we're looking at? Correct.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. So any other changes to this plan other than, what was it, Wes wanted to add? You wanted to add? Move senior night earlier, right.
Great idea.
Great
Very
idea
thoughtful.
to do that. Okay. Any other changes to your plan that you can think of? No?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Okay. So,
Madam
Do-
Chair,
yes, sir?
could I make a recommendation?
Sure. You can make a motion.
Motion?
Yes.
We accept the recommendation from the superintendent's administration as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. West. All in favor, say aye. Can I hear individually? Because I have Kirk on the phone. Kirk? He's giving me a thumbs up. Aye. Okay. All the rest of you, an aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We need to listen to our leaders who are in front of us. We may be the leaders up here. We're just a yes and no people. You all are the ones doing all the work. And to those of you sitting outside listening to us, this puts a lot of weight back on our parents. You all have to help us make this work, okay? As our esteemed former principal over here, Mr. Chad would say, you need to be in their business. And we expect you to do that. Thank you, sir. Thank
I'll
you.
make that motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn. Do I hear a second? I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chad, for giving us that wisdom.